Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. As you read by the title, you know today's video is the labor and delivery video story time. Where to start? Let's see. I guess we can start from when I originally started laboring, which was around 36 weeks. From 36 weeks, we found ourselves in the hospital almost every other day. So if not every other day, we were in the hospital every 3 days, every 4 days because of something. So we first went in, it was around 36 weeks, 4 days, and I was having contractions every 3 minutes. They were lasting a minute apart each, which is totally crazy to me. We went in, we get checked, we're not dilated. So of course they can't keep me. They monitor the contractions for we got there around 11 at night, and we didn't leave until about 3 o'clock in the morning. So we were there for about 4 hours, and they were just monitoring everything. They really didn't do much. They gave me IV fluids to see if I was just maybe dehydrated. Nope, wasn't dehydrated. I stayed very hydrated throughout the entire pregnancy, so I did do very well with that. I knew that wasn't the problem for us. The contractions just kept going. They ended up just giving me some Tylenol. They just ended up sending us home, which is totally fine. Contractions just pick right back up. I was at work, and I ended up calling my husband, and I said, I can't do the pain today. I have to go home. He says, well, we live further away than the hospital, so call the doctors to see what they want us to do, and we'll go from there. I called the doctors. My contractions were every 1 to 3 minutes apart while I was at work, and they were lasting for about 30 seconds to a minute. Now, I called them, and they were like, oh, well, maybe you should go to the hospital. So we get to the hospital. We're there for about 6 hours. Continue to still monitor it. Went to the doctors. I had asked them, was there any natural labor inducing methods that I can do to try to speed up this process, see what we can do to get the ball up and running. And nope, nothing that we can do. We just really have to wait it out because we can't really rush the process. Perfectly fine. By that point, I was 2 centimeters dilated. So I'm like, okay, I'm 2 centimeters dilated. I'm still contracting. I was 38 weeks and 5 days. And I was only 2 centimeters dilated still, so not dilated enough for them to keep me, but my contractions were still there. So it was just completely crazy. So of course they sent us home. Oh, continue to monitor it. If it gets unbearable, take Tylenol, whatever. A week goes by. It was Wednesday. We went into the hospital on a Wednesday. So let's rewind back to that Monday. On that Monday, I was 39 weeks and 2 days. And I just knew that was the week that she was gonna come. I started feeling some body changes. My mucus plug had already came out the week prior. So I was just counting down the days for when she would arrive. Monday, it just got really, really, really unbearable. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna take a Tylenol, see if it settles down the pain. I'm gonna hop in the shower, and we're just gonna stick to that. And it ended up, the contractions ended up going away, so we never went to the hospital, which is totally fine, because we had a doctor's appointment on that Thursday, and I would have been 39 weeks and 5 days. I would have been full term on that Saturday. So my husband asked me, you know, what do we want to do? And I'm like, I'm just going to wait it out, see if it becomes a little bit more consistent. Now, the only reason why we kept going in and out the hospital and the doctors kept sending us to the hospital versus to the doctor's office, I tested positive. I was positive for the strep B, the GBS strep B testing. I tested positive for that. So because of that, I had to be administered antibiotics 4 hours before delivering the baby, at least 4 hours. At least once 4 hours prior to delivering the baby. So they were very cautious about where I went, if I was going to the hospital or going to the doctor's office. So that's why they kept sending me to the hospital versus to their office directly. Wednesday come, it is now July 1st. It is a Wednesday. And I am just sitting here, my husband's at work, and I'm at home. And I hop in the shower, I wash my hair, I braid my hair, because I wanted my hair to be out of the way for labor. And I just knew something was gonna happen. So I just wanted to prepare myself. All right, it's time to go. We get to the hospital. I'm still 2 centimeters dilated. My contractions at this point was every minute. And they were lasting for a minute and a half. they asked me what I wanted to do, and I told them if it was possible, I wanted to stay, and I wanted to just go ahead and try to get this baby out. They did see that I was 2 centimeters dilated and 100% effaced, so way better than I was the Thursday prior. Thursday prior, I was only 50% effaced, 2 centimeters dilated, and then when I went in on July 1st, I was 2 centimeters dilated, 100% effaced. But they could feel her head. She was already in position. So the doctor said, go ahead and keep her. So they put me on the antibiotics, and they gave me the pros and cons of everything. We labored for a few hours. They came back in. So on top of delivering during COVID, not having any visitors, only allowing one person there with you, I had to be tested for COVID. Wish I would have known that, because I would have tried to do it. I was already 39 weeks, so my doctors wasn't going to allow me to go past 41 weeks. We would have ended up doing an induction at 41 weeks if I would have went further, if I would have went past 40 weeks. So I should have just prepared myself and gotten the test, but I didn't, so that's my bad. We get there and they're like, oh, well, we have to test you for COVID. If your test comes back positive, you have to push with the mask on. And I'm thinking to myself, oh great, I'm already out of breath. Because I'm pregnant, I'm uncomfortable, I'm very big, and I'm about to push a baby out. If it would have came back negative, I didn't have to have a mask on. So that's what I was hoping for. But we get there and they're like, oh, we ran out of the rapid testing. The rapid testing you get back within 2 to 4 hours after they take the test. So I'm like, okay, great. So what test do you have? They're like, we have the 48-hour testing. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So they put it in. The test wasn't as bad as what people proclaim. It really wasn't. It wasn't that long. It was about a minute. It was very uncomfortable. I can say that, but it didn't hurt. They just stuck it in your nostril, twisted it around, pulled it back out. She did say prior to her doing it that it's either going to make me cry or make me sneeze. So I wasn't allowed to leave the room, wasn't allowed to walk the halls, so that was very hard. Most people say that walking induces your labor, which it really does, especially when you're in the hospital, because at that point, your body, like, you're telling your body that you're ready to deliver. They ended up calling my doctors, asking my doctors, what do they suggest? And they asked me, what did I want? And I said, if there's anything that we can do to speed up this process, I am A-okay. I was already in a lot of pain. My contractions were a minute apart. And they were lasting a minute. So at this point, I was just ready for her to come. And it had been this way for the last 3.5 weeks. So at this point, I'm very uncomfortable, very upset, because I feel like I just want her here, and I don't want to go through this pain, but I'm going through this pain anyway. They ended up giving me this pill. I don't remember what the pill was called, but they inserted a pill. It was very, very small. It's literally smaller than like a baby aspirin. If you've ever taken a baby aspirin, it's very, very small. It's like the size of a, grain of salt, a grain of rice. But it's supposed to make my contractions a lot stronger than what they already were, so we can go ahead and dilate more. They insert it and they say, okay, well, you have to stay still for an hour, at least an hour. You can't move, can't go to the bathroom. It has to be in here for 2 to 3 hours, and then we'll come back and check you to see what the progress is. I'm like, okay, great. So I'm like, wait, can I go to the bathroom before you start? So I'm drinking water, eating ice chips, and then they have all of these IVs going in me. So I'm like, okay, I'm already going to the bathroom every 15 minutes, so now I need to hold it for at least an hour. Okay, great. We take a nap, and then they come back and they check me, and I'm 3 centimeters dilated. Around 3 o'clock, there wasn't really much change. I was only 3 centimeters dilated, and they were hoping for me to be around 4 or 5. They start discussing Pitocin, and I'm like, okay, we can do the Pitocin, that's fine. Disclose the risk and the pros and the cons. They discussed all of that with us already. I ended up asking, they ended up doing the Pitocin, and I handled the Pitocin pretty well up until it got to level 6. So I ended up asking for the epidural. Epidural, you really don't feel anything when it gets inserted into your body. I didn't feel anything whatsoever. What I can say is the epidural did not work for me, which was a horrible feeling. They did the epidural, they administered it, and I want to say within about 20 minutes or so, I didn't feel anything. Like, I was completely numb, and then after that, it just wore off, like, completely. It wore off completely, and I was just in utter shock. At this point, it was about 12 in the afternoon. and I was just in so much pain, and the epidural was not working. They're like, oh, well, here's the button. If you need some more, or if you need to re-up it, just press it. I'm like, okay. So I pressed it, and it would only work for about maybe 1 or 2 contractions, and then here comes the pain right back again. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is not working for me. I wish I had that story where I don't feel anything from waist down, but that was not my story. I felt everything. It did not work for me whatsoever. The doctor came in, she checked me, and she left. 10 minutes later, I heard this loud pop. It was like dropping your keys on hardwood floors. It was just like pop, and I was like, ouch, that really, really, really hurt. And next thing you know, I just feel like this gush. And I ended up calling the nurse. Well, I told Theo, and I was like, I think my water just broke. And he's like, what? I was like, I think my water just broke. And he's like, okay, call the nurse. So I paged the nurse back in, and she checks me, she swabs it, and she's like, no, it might just be your mucus plug because I don't see any water. There's no amniotic fluid on the swab. I'm like, okay, that's fine. 10 minutes later, another nurse comes in. And at this point, I can feel like all of the water just coming out. I feel like I'm just sitting in a puddle of water, and it feels gross. It feels disgusting. And the new nurse comes in, and I'm like, I think I just broke my water. And I was like, I think my water just broke. And she ended up checking me, and sure enough, my water broke. And I was like, okay, I know I'm not crazy. So my water ended up breaking. I don't know how far along I was at this point. But what I can say is by 2:30, between 1:30 and 2:30, I don't know what happened to my body, but my body just ended up changing completely. I ended up not feeling contractions, but feeling a lot of pressure, like I have to poop. So I feel like I am about to poop on myself. And at this point, I'm like, what is going on? It is definitely time for me to push. So I paged the nurse, and they're like, well, we just checked you 30 minutes ago when you were only 3 centimeters. There's no way that you went from 3 to 10 in 30 minutes. I'm like, this is unbearable pain, and it's not the same pain that I was feeling for the last 3 weeks. This is definitely a different type of pain, and I'm not crazy. I can tell you that I definitely have to push. They're like, okay, just wait it out. We're going to check you for another 30 minutes. The pain was so bad that I was just squeezing my body, like clenching my body, clenching my legs, clenching my hips, all tight together, versus me just allowing my body to just go. And that's how I knew I had to push. But they told me not to push, and they told me to just try to wait it out because it's just stronger contractions. So I'm trying to like tighten my entire body up, and I just start screaming to the top of my lungs. First of all, I had the epidural, so we were both very shocked that I was even feeling this pain to begin with. And then when it was time to push, they told me not to push, and I was doing everything to try to keep my body to not be able to push this baby out. So I turned to my side, and I'm clenching my legs together, trying to like close up my hips. I couldn't talk. I was shaking. That part was horrible. I ended up screaming to the top of my lungs as if somebody was trying to kill me. Theo he was sitting in a chair like right next to me. He ends up jumping up, and he tries to put pressure on my lower back. Nothing was helping. I asked him to just leave me alone and get away from me, because at this point I was upset that nobody was listening to what I wanted or what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to check me to see if I was centimeters dilated so we can try to push. They didn't do that. And I was very upset, and I was in a lot of pain. Came in after I screamed as if somebody was literally trying to kill me. And I want to say about 10 nurses all ran in, and they were like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I have to push. And they're like, well, we just checked you an hour ago and you were only 3 centimeters, and you haven't shown any progress. And I'm like, I have to push. I don't know what you want me to do. I was like, I feel like I'm about to poop myself. So I can either push with you guys here, or I can try to push on my own at this point. So I'm like, what are you guys going to do? So they come in, the new nurse comes in after a shift change, and she checks me, and she's like, she whispers to the other nurse, and she's like, she's 10 centimeters, well, tried to whisper, but we could hear her. They're like, oh, well, she's 10 centimeters dilated, and she's 100% thinned out. And I'm like, bro, I've been telling you guys this for the last 30 minutes. Like, hello. I don't really see much change with the baby coming down any further. They decided that they were going to try to rotate the baby. That did not feel good whatsoever. That pain was excruciating. And they just couldn't turn her. Her shoulders were like stuck wherever, like her shoulders were stuck in my pelvis, and they couldn't even turn her. They were trying to turn her, and they were using even more force to try to turn her, and they couldn't. So they just said, just keep on pushing. Let's just see if baby moves, if she decides that she's gonna move her position where she is, so we can try to turn her, and it'll be better for you while you're pushing. No, we pushed for 3 hours. It's not doing anything but just getting her stuck even deeper where she already was. So they ended up paging my nurse in, who comes in, and she was very confused. Well, there was a shift changed. So the new nurse, my new OB who was coming in, it was a shift change at 6. They change I think my doctor comes in and she's like, why do y'all have her Pitocin turned off? And they're like, oh, well, we're not sure. And they're like, and my doctor's like, well, at this point, you had her on Pitocin, you inserted the pill, and then you turned it off while she's pushing. Yeah, the baby's gonna get stuck because it's not, like, she's not able to contract as much as she was, like, as hard as she was doing. So you guys aren't helping her. So the doctor who was there, they ended up going outside, they ended up talking, and my doctor who delivered Bella, she came in and she's like, well, you have 2 options. We can up your Pitocin, but if we up it, we need to up it to about a 10 or 12. I never even got past the 8 on my Pitocin, or I didn't even get past the 8 on my Pitocin. So them pushing it up to a 10 or 12, while I was pushing, I was like, whoa, that's like completely crazy. Or she said, or we can go in for a C-section. I said, well, I want to push, but I don't want that Pitocin up that far. She said, okay, well, we can up it to a 6 to try to get everything smooth along, and let's see what happens for about 30 minutes. 30 minutes goes by, and I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm pushing. At this point, I'm falling asleep in between every contraction, and they're like, you have to wake up, like, you can't fall asleep. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like crazy. So I told them I did not want to use a mirror. Even I really wanted to, and probably for my next one, if we have a vaginal delivery, I probably will use the mirror as soon as I possibly can, because I feel like that would have helped. But at that point, she was already stuck, so I felt defeated. Once she got stuck, I just really felt defeated completely, because the only way for them to even get any movement, for me to get her to move further down, is by them turning her, but they couldn't even turn her. So it was just very crazy. Moby says, I want you guys to start thinking about just prepping for a C-section. At this point, I'm like, I look at Theo and I said, let's just go ahead and prep for a C-section. And he says, no, let's just wait it out the 30 more minutes like they said, and then if nothing happens, then we can prep for a C-section. He's like, but you didn't want this. He's like, so I want you to not feel discouraged. And he's just motivating me, trying to motivate me. At that point, I was like, look, let's just prep for a C-section. I've been pushing for way too long. I've been laboring for way too long. She's stuck. She's not coming out this way. Like, she's completely stuck. Like, there's no way. And I feel like, I 100% feel like she wouldn't have been stuck if they would have checked me when I told them that I needed to push. If they would have checked me when I told them I needed to push, and they would have seen that I was 10 centimeters dilated, I wouldn't have had to clench my body. Like, I was like clenching everything together. I can physically feel like everything coming closer together. So I feel like that played a part with her getting stuck. They probably won't ever admit to that, but, well, I'm pretty sure that they won't. Anyway, We ended up FaceTiming my mom, and I tell her that we're about to prep for a C-section. Ooh, so emotional. And she's like, you know, you can do this. And I was just so scared at this point. And Theo was so scared. So at the time that, after the 30 minutes we went by and we decided we were gonna go ahead and just go through with the C-section, I was completely scared. I was so scared, and I let that be known. I looked at the doctor, I looked at the nurse, and I was just like, I'm really scared. So I started asking her these questions, and I'm like, okay, well, even though we're having a C-section, can dad still cut the cord? And they're like, unfortunately, no, because of COVID. Once they put the plastic up, everything down bottom will be considered sterile, and everything up top is considered not sterile. So they can't like cross-contaminate, because my test results never came back by that point. So my test results hadn't come back by then. So because of that, Theo wasn't able to cut the cord, and I was completely devastated. I was like, I think I was more devastated hearing that than hearing that we were prepping for the for the C-section. So I call my mom, and I'm telling her like how scared I am, and she's like, it's okay, everything's gonna be fine. But I could see like her facial expression change, like. So I call her, and once I tell her that we're prepping for the C-section, I can see her facial expression change completely, and like I can see that she has like tears building up her eyes, but she's trying to stay strong because she knew that I was very emotional. I think that was one thing I said I did not want. I completely said I did not want a C-section, no matter what. I did not want to be cut open. I did not want to be put down. I did not want surgery. I did not want any of that, and it ended up happening. So many emotions just thinking about how everything played out. So they come in, the anesthesia team comes in, and they numb me completely. They start telling me that what they're gonna do, what they're gonna be doing. So they're telling me that they're gonna put the tarp up. They are disclosing that once they put the tarp up, I'm gonna have this horrible smell of crayons. Which the sheet did smell like crayons, which was really weird. But at that point, there was about 6 people from the anesthesia team and about 10 people from the nursery department, the NICU team. So everybody was just like there, and then they tell Theo that he's gonna get changed, he's gonna wait in the room, and then they're gonna come out and they're gonna get him once they have me like on the table, sedated and everything numb completely how they need to have me. So I'm being rolled out of the labor room, and the last thing I think I really remember at that point from being in that room, I think Theo had said something like, I'll be in there soon. And I was like really, really scared, because they were like disclosing like, if your body doesn't take to the medication and your body doesn't go numb, we're gonna have to put you to sleep. And if we put you to sleep, he can't be in there. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I really, like at this point everything had gone completely horribly wrong. So I was like, oh gosh, now I'm probably not gonna even take to this medication. I didn't take to the epidural, I'm not gonna take to this medication. I don't want to be like completely like asleep, because I want him to be in there. I don't like, oh gosh. So at this point I was like, what am I gonna do? They're rolling me out of the room, and they're rolling me into the operating room. They go down this hallway, and it's another hallway to the left, and they roll me into this big old white room. Like, I felt like there was nothing in there. It was just like all white. It was like this bright white, all of these lights everywhere, and all I seen was white. So they lifted me from the one bed onto the table. On top of that, I'm 5 foot and 1 inch. So they had the table set up, and then they had to break the table down right under me because my body didn't fit where they needed me to fit. So they're dragging me down further down the table. And they're like propping my arms up, and they're like breaking the arm part down, putting it back up, and trying to get me completely like where I'm supposed to be. At this point, I'm shaking, like I'm trembling, like I'm outside in the middle of a blizzard, completely naked. Like I'm just trembling, and I don't know why. They put the sheet up, they put the oxygen mask on me, and I have the lady from the anesthesia team. She's sitting right here on my right side, and she's like, if you start to feel anything, let me know. Let me know as soon as you start to feel anything. Before they started cutting, they had like, I guess it can compare it to like a thumbtack, and they were just like poking my stomach, and they were like, let me know if you feel this, if you feel that, if you feel this, if you feel that. I felt them in some areas, didn't feel them in other areas, so they just try to adjust the medication so I wouldn't feel it at all. Once I didn't feel it, they began operating. So they began cutting me open, and I just hear them like calling out these numbers. And I remember like me looking, and I'm like, where in the heck is my husband? Like, you guys are beginning all of this and my husband's not here. So let's just like put a pause on this. So I look at the lady and I'm like, where's my husband? And she's like, oh, they just went out to get him. And I was like, well, why are they cutting me open? My husband's not here and I want him to be here. And they're like, well, he'll be in here in just a second. So at this point, I have like tears coming down my eyes because I'm like terribly scared. My husband is not here. And all I can smell is crayons. I'm smelling crayons, seeing these bright lights and white walls. That's all I see. And I'm hearing numbers being called out. He finally walks in and he sits down and he's like, babe, I'm right here. And he starts holding my hand. And I think that was the most comforting part of the entire surgery. And I'm telling him, I'm so scared. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, and he's like, he's like, are you cold? I was like, I'm not cold. I don't know why I'm shaking. The room was definitely cold, but I wasn't cold. Like, my body was just not cold. My body was just shaking, like just trembling completely. And he's like kissing my forehead and he's rubbing my head and he's like, everything's gonna be okay. So we were there for about 30 or so minutes, and they're cutting me open, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I asked the lady, I was like, am I cut open yet? And my doctor was just like, yeah, we have the first layer cut open. I'm like, the first layer? Like, what? How many layers are you guys going to go through? How long is this cutting process going to take? So they ended up just continue cutting, and then I knew it was almost time for her to be born once my doctor said, well, I have her uterus. And I'm like, wait, they took out my uterus? I'm like, are they going to put my uterus back? Am I going to be able to have kids in the future? Like, what is going on? Like, that's just the only thing like running through my mind right now. Like, what do you mean you have my uterus? So they're like, I need the uterus. I have the uterus. I'm ready for the uterus. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, why do you have my uterus? Like, what? So they put the uterus in the pan, and then they were pulling. I can't feel much, but I can feel like just a little pressure with them pulling and moving stuff around in my stomach, trying to get the baby out. So next thing I hear, my doctor says, my doctor pulls baby out. She pulls baby out and she says, I have baby. And I started crying. And Theo was like, why are you crying? He didn't hear when the doctor had said, I have baby. And I was like, they took out the baby. And he was like, no, they didn't. I don't hear her crying. And then she started crying. And it was just like the sweetest, softest little cry ever. She was born at 6:50 p.m. It's like I replay that specific time in my head over and over again. Like, all of it was so worth it as soon as I heard her cry. Like, that is the sweetest, purest cry I've ever heard in my life. And then they ended up cutting her cord, putting her on the warmer, and where they had me on the table, as long as I can move my fingers, I can move the little paper or the plastic over so I could see her. So I was like, had my arm out, and I like moved the paper in. She was so long. And she had so much hair. Like, oh my gosh, look at all of that hair. Once they did that, they wrapped her up, and they brought her over to me. Well, I think Theo had her. I'm trying to remember. Everything is like such a blur after that. I think Theo was holding her, and the doctors had, or the nurses, somebody had asked if they wanted us to take a picture, and of course we said yes. So they took a picture of us, and of course I still have the plastic up. My stomach is still cut open. You can't see that in the picture, but they took a picture of us, and then they took the baby back from him, and he ended up going into the hallway. So he went out. I think he texted my mom. I don't remember who he texted. I think he texted my mom first. He texted my mom and said, "Baby's here," and I think he sent her a picture, and I think he texted a few people in his family. I'm not 100% sure. He went out, and he went to like the recovery room where I would be after the C-section. So he waited in there. He went to the bathroom because he was still waiting for the baby, and he went out there, and then they finally brought the baby over to him. So he had some time with the baby. She was born at 6:50, and I was still in surgery up until 8:08. So I was there they were sewing me back up, putting things back together for an hour and 18 minutes. The worst part, like, I didn't feel them cutting. I didn't feel them taking anything out. I didn't feel them taking baby out. I didn't feel any of that. What I did feel was when they put my uterus back in me. Like, and the lady from the anesthesia team, she told me that part was going to be uncomfortable. It doesn't really hurt because they have your body numb. But she's like, just hold my hand and you can squeeze my hand if you need to squeeze my hand. I'm like, oh, that's so nice. Okay, cool. So they are sucking out all the blood, which, to think about it, like, you lose so much blood during the surgery. You lose so much blood pushing out a baby, let alone a C-section. It's so much blood. So I can hear like them trying to suction all the blood out that I've lost. The lady was like, okay, they're about to put your uterus back in. So just squeeze my hand if you need to squeeze my hand, or don't squeeze it if you don't need to squeeze it. So she holds my hand, she was very, very nice. So they put it back in, and I'm like, ow, like, what is going on? Like, I was like, I can feel that. And she was like, oh, it's just, she's like, you're going to feel it for about 30 seconds. So they're putting it in, trying to adjust it right. Boom. Sew it back up, whatever they do with the uterus. And then they start sewing me up. And they're like, okay, I heard the doctor say, her assistant said, okay, layer one's done. And then they just keep sewing. And I'm like, are we almost done? And she's like, yeah, we're about halfway done. I'm like, halfway? What the heck? Okay, whatever. Finally, around 8 o'clock, they're like, okay, we're finished. So they bring the bed in, and they're just explaining how they're gonna get me transferred from one bed to the other. So they're like, okay, we're gonna move your body over to you're gonna lean to your right. So I leaned to the right, and I felt like I was about to fall off. So it was like 5 nurses, doctors, whoever they were all right here just holding my body. Like, one was holding my foot, one was holding my knee, one was holding my hips, one was holding my shoulder. And they were all like just trying to keep my body just forward this way so they can it was like this board they put under me. They put me back over. They lifted the board and then brought me over to the bed. Then they turned me back over, removed the board, and then laid me back down. So after her bath, they finally brought her over to me, and I think that moment, like that skin to skin moment, was so intimate. Like, it was so special. She was so pretty. Like, that was my first time actually like laying my eyes on her so close up. She was so pretty, and she was just like this. She was just so perfect. So they laid her on my chest, and like we just laid there, and I just started crying. And it was just so sweet. And I think after about 45 minutes, after about 45 or so minutes with me and her doing skin to skin, she started like fussing because she was like really hungry. She was very, very hungry. So the nurse came over, and the baby girl hatched right away. She didn't have any problems or complications with it, which was it was like so amazing, because out of everything that could have gone wrong, that's one of them that could have gone wrong, but I'm glad it didn't. She latched right away. We get rolled into our room, and we stayed there until Sunday. While we were there are a lot of things could have been better. A lot of things could have been better. The first night that we were there, it was horrible. The nurse that we had a nasty attitude, and I was like, look, lady, I don't have time for you. Like, she comes in to check my vitals, and she moves the baby, and the baby bumps into the wall. This is like 3 o'clock in the morning. The baby starts crying. Theo wakes up, starts arguing with the nurse, like, why are you so rude? First of all, why are you pushing the baby's cart that hard? Like, first of all, you see they were all sleeping in here. Like, you don't come in here and like softly. You didn't, like, you just turned all the lights on, not even just like part of the room. You turned all the lights on. You came in here loud. Then you pushed the baby's cart. It hit the wall. You didn't say sorry about that, bro. The first night was completely horrible. However, the next day, however, we started getting wonderful nurses. Like, every shift change, we just had a new nurse, and it was a better nurse than the time before, and it was just completely amazing. Not that night, but that Friday and Saturday that we were there, everything went pretty well. We were really excited to leave we really wanted to leave on Saturday. We were very tired of being in the hospital. It was so exhausting being there, always being interrupted with our sleeping. Not because of the baby, but because of the nurses. Everybody wants to come in, wants to check the baby. And our test results didn't come in until Saturday. So we spent all day Friday. And when at our hospital, if your test results didn't come back, whatever machines that they checked you, like the blood pressure machine and all of those things, had to stay in the room. So we had like 5 different machines that had to stay in there, which took up a lot of space. All because our test results didn't come back. Saturday morning, the nurse comes in, and all she has is just like, she just has like her little mask. She doesn't have like none of her other stuff on. Like, she had a plastic mask. She had like 2 different like mouth and nose coverings, and then she had like a plastic mask. She didn't have on, and then she had on a plastic PPE garment. And she didn't have on that, and I was like, oh my gosh, our test results back? And she's like, yeah, your test results are, they came back negative, so we don't have to worry about all of this. And I'm like, yes. So they start removing all of the stuff, and we called our mom, because we said that once our test results came back negative, we could have had 1 visitor a day between 12 and 8. So we could have had an additional visitor. So outside of me and Theo, an additional person could have come, and only 1 person between 12 and 8. So we called my mom, and my mom ended up coming. She brought us some Chick-fil-A, which Theo spilled all of our juice on the floor, but he's gonna say the baby did it. And when she had came in, that was such a sweet moment. I'm probably gonna insert that clip, but it was so sweet. She came in, she brought the baby balloons and some flowers. Well, she brought me some flowers, the baby a balloon, and her stuffed animals, these stuffed animals, and she just started crying because it's her first grandchild. This was her first grandchild, and she couldn't be there. And then I'm her first child to deliver a baby, and she couldn't be there for me. So it was a very emotional, like, throughout the entire process. And then, like, her finally coming was very emotional. It was happy tears, of course, but very emotional.
Abu.
So guys, I hope this video wasn't too long, but be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. More family content is coming out once we get our schedules and stuff situated with baby. And thank you guys all for supporting us, and we will see you guys in the next video. Bye.